Okay, let's look at year 2 results, and we see that net profits have increased tremendously for some teams. We have a new number 1 team. Let's Get Crazy is in number 1 spot with 77 million. We have a number 2, the Wheel MVP, and then we have last year's number 2 is this year's number 3, and Cruising By. We have about 5 teams over the 70 million mark in net profits, which is amazing. Any team that scored over 50 million in profits is doing very well. If we look at points per round, we see that the highest amount of points this round was 800. And we see most teams are coming in between the 4 and 500 points. And that's what you want to be in this 4 to 500 point range, because that gets you the A for the project. And that's the normal scoring. So the first round is easy to score high because you're coming off a very poor management team in year 0. So you're competing against a management team that was fired that you replaced. So it's easy to beat their very poor results. But in the second year, you're trying to beat your results from the previous year in the year-over-year review and the overview points, which is a little bit more difficult. So that's why scores generally decline in the second year. So it's nothing to be worried about. Just remember, you just try to stay on target to earn between 4 and 500 points. Now it also gets difficult as the competition heats up, because now you're competing for auto sales and profits in the competitive market. So whatever autos you don't sell that you had demand for will go to another company that might have a better strategy, a better marketing, distribution, or amount of money spent on marketing, and a better design. So you are competing with all the other students in the class as well as against your last year's performance. Now the stock price, we have this company is maintaining the lead position in stock price, and we have a new number 2 that just eked out Cruising By, Crash and Burn eked out Cruising By to be number 2, and we have a new number 4, the Wheel MVP, and a new number 5. So a little change up here in stock price, which is good. By and large, all teams increased their stock price, and we had 2 of the lowest produced stock prices last round really turn it around, and were able to move up their stock prices quite nicely in the second round. If we look at sales per team, we have a nice all teams increased the sales. This team probably had a little bit flatter of an increase than most teams, so they should really look at their forecasting. This team increased a great deal, still has a lot of work to do. There's a big gap between them and the majority of the teams. So the bottom round of 90% of the teams is 314 to 371 million in total sales per team. And we have a new leader in sales, which would be a Signature Order Group, followed by last year's leader, Hot Wheels. So the real trick here is, how do you turn these top sales into top profits? Okay, if we look at earnings per share, we have the same number 1 company, although their slope is not as steep. We have a new number 1, Crash and Burn, followed by the Wheel MPV. And the Wheel MPV really increased their earnings per share the most of any team this round, except maybe for as far as the slope. This couple companies down here have a pretty nice slope too. But as far as total dollars, they went from 3 to 7. So pretty nice earnings per share turn. We had 2 teams had their earnings per share reduced, which is very bad, because when you have a marketplace where sales are growing double digits and profits are growing for most companies, and you are falling behind in your earnings per share, there's something your team fundamentally is doing very wrong. You should always, in this simulation with the sales growing so fast, you should always be increasing your earnings per share. So these companies should really run some practice rounds, think about what they're doing, check out the competition a little bit more. Okay, so let's go back to discuss some issues on the leaderboard here. So, okay, we talked about points before. Gross profit margins. So the top team is at 54%, and the bottom teams here, you started at 40%. So I don't know why people are still 45% or below. You really have not made a huge increase in your gross profits, where you should be more closer to the high 45% and above for gross profit margin in the second round. So that's something that needs to be focused on for these teams down here. You're really not improving your profit margins. Investors hate that. You're not maximizing shareholders' wealth. And we talked about stock price before on the slide. Return on equity has gone up nicely for a lot of teams, and this is the return, basically the profits on the equity portion of the company. Total points, so we have, we're looking for 2,500 points, and we have a number of teams that are more than halfway there. So we have all these teams here are more than halfway to only after 2 rounds, and there's 4 more rounds to go. So operating profit margin is really looking at how effectively you're managing your advertising. If you're over advertising, you're giving up operational profit margins here. Earnings per share we talked about. Return on assets, looking at your asset base compared to your profits. So if you buy a lot of unnecessary factories or have a lot of unused inventory, it's going to reduce your return on assets. Okay, we talked about profit margin, net, and the way to improve net profit margin is to really manage your debt and your interest you're paying, and your revenues per share, total asset turnover, turning assets into revenues. Okay, so that's pretty much the outlay here. So remember, as we go into the next round, and I'm just going to call it my demo here. As you go into the next round, you want to remember to review a lot of what we have been working on in this semester, as far as we're talking about, we're in a strategy class here, and you should have had, this is a course you typically take more towards the end of your degree. So if you had accounting and finance and marketing, you should be using those skills you learned in those courses to help you do better with the simulation. And of course, now that we're, in year 3, you want to carefully check over year 1 and year 2 and see where you can improve. For example, I could improve here. My profit margin went down to 50. I really should get that back up higher, and I should, I have good surplus and operational investments. I had about 400 points, which is what you want to, not a bad score for the second round. I should check over my assessments and see, total asset turnover I didn't do so well, just average. Operational investments were average. So I should look over my assessments, check out my chart, specifically my performance chart, and see how I did on this blue is my demand, and I'll see here that I greatly under forecasted. I could have sold many more cars in each of the areas except for economy, and that's important when you complete the simulation. I should check out my competitors, see what they've done. I should, if I haven't already done so, I should read over the student user manual to get a better idea how this game works, and then I should go back into sales and realizing that, I left off if a profit margin of 50%. So when I build my cars this year, I want to make sure that I am, whatever I do, I want to make sure that my forecasting is on point and that my profit margins are on point. So here I could see that 44% I might have to actually disappoint to try to get my profit margins higher. I wanted them to be above last round. Last round was 50, so I want to try to get my profit margins up, even if it means making a car that is going to disappoint my consumers a little bit, not be, not really disappoint, but kind of come in at the low or bottom or below customer expectations. And plenty of cars do have statistics that are below customer expectations, but they still sell. If you look at the Kia Soul, they are selling, but they don't really, they're not everyone's, not meeting everyone's. Okay, so there are limits to how far I can go, but I can still play around with some of these numbers to try and, make my profits. Since I probably didn't invest enough in my operational cost reductions. All right. So as you know, on the marketing side, when you do the marketing, it takes a while to do this. So I'm going to do this offline. Okay, so I need to buy a production plant here. So I'm spending a lot of money in production plants. This is going to hurt my total asset turnover because I'm adding $30 million to additional factories that goes into my asset bucket. But that's okay, because when you're growing a business, sometimes you have to expand. If you can't be afraid to grow your assets. Now I'm going to let's do some more operational investments and submit that. And let's see how. Okay, so I have a nice surplus here, so I'll buy back some stock. Maybe pay down some debt. Okay, so that's I wouldn't follow exactly what I'm doing here, because I'm just kind of throwing numbers in, but the main thing I'm doing is trying to maximize my profits, is what my focus is here, and trying to increase my overall profit margin per share. So if I submit my round, we'll see that I'm now in year 4, and my total points were 567, which is above my goal of 400, and I was able to increase my gross, operational, and net profit margins, which helped me to gain points in other areas. Although my forecasting wasn't so strong in truck, and I made some points in my quick and debit ratios. So overall, a pretty good year. So just an example of how you have to really focus on these profit margins here if you want your scores to go higher. It's all about maximizing shareholders' wealth, increasing profits, which increase earnings per share, which increases all the return per share variables. Okay, so that's my quick review of our round 2. Next week, I'm going to do the review after you've completed rounds 3 and 4, so I'm going to wrap up at the end of the week. The first week I do a video for each round, 1 and 2, and next week I'm going to do a video for rounds 3 and 4 together at the end. So good luck. Remember, practice is what helps you do better in this game. So the practice rounds, you can work on those as much as you need to try to figure out how to compete better in the team competition. Okay, thanks for watching, and I hope you found this helpful.